Rory Calhoun finally talks about Randolph Scott. Rory Calhoun was born Francis Timothymaku on August 8, 1922 in Los Angeles, California. He had a really tough childhood but became a famous movie and TV star during Hollywood's best years. He grew up during the Great Depression, which was a very hard time, and he kept getting in trouble with the police when he was a teenager. By his early 22s, he had been locked up in a government jail for stealing cars and had even been in prison for robbery. This was a really dark time that could have ruined his whole life, but instead, it became part of his amazing story. When he finally got his life together, Calhoun never hid his past. In interviews, he talked about his mistakes, and he often said his hard times gave him the toughness and realness that made him a great actor. His start in Hollywood almost seemed like an accident, like it was meant to. After getting out of jail, he worked different jobs, like fixing cars, cutting down trees, and working as a cowboy until he met actor Alan Ladd Bykance and everything changed. Ladd's wife, Sue Carroll, helped people become actors and she saw something special in this tall, big guy with amazing eyes. She signed him up, gave him the stage name Rory Calhoun, and sent him to acting school. After that, he became famous really fast. Rory started acting in movies in the early 1940s and quickly got roles in big Hollywood films. He was naturally athletic, had a deep voice, and looked rugged and handsome, which made him perfect for Western movies, which were super popular back then. He was in lots of movies during the 1950s like The Red House in 1947, A Song in My Heart in 1952, and River of No Return in 1954 where he acted with Marilyn Monroe and Robert Mitchum. People loved his calm confidence. He wasn't a loud or crazy actor, but his quiet strength and cool charm made everyone pay attention. What made Calhoun really special was that he was the real deal. Unlike most actors who just pretended to be cowboys, Rory actually was one. He really knew how to ride horses, use a rope, and handle the outdoors. When Hestered in his popular TV show, The Texan, from 1958 to 1960, people believed he was a real cowboy not just because he could act, but because that's what he really was. The show was a huge hit and Calhoun became a TV favorite. People admired him for being a hero and a real gentleman. When cameras weren't rolling, Calhoun did things his own way. People knew him for being independent, nice to his fans, and a really good friend. But he also liked to have fun and had a reputation as someone who didn't always follow their rules. Gossip writers loved writing about his love life, while movie directors loved how reliable and professional he was on set. His interesting personality, tough but sweet, wild but thoughtful, made him both a great actor and a living legend. When Western movies stopped being as popular in the late 1960s, Calhoun was smart and changed what kind of roles he took, doing TV shows, smaller budget films, and later even funny movies and action films. He was in movies like Motel Hell in 1980, showing he could surprise audiences even when he was older. Because he could do different things and wasn't afraid to try new stuff, he kept working for many years, long after other actors from his time had stopped. Rory Calhoun's personality was just as exciting and colorful as the characters he played in movies, and his marriages showed how complicated and passionate he was as a person who lived life to the fullest both when people were watching and when they weren't. His first marriage was to actress and singer Lita Barron, a woman who also lived the fancy Hollywood life and understood what it was like to be famous. They got married in 1948 when Calhoun was becoming really popular in entertainment. Back then, he was getting noticed as one of Hollywood's best-looking leading men, acting in westerns and adventure movies that showed off his good looks and natural coolness. Lita, who was known for singing and being in movies, went with him to fancy events, and together they became one of Hollywood's most good-looking and talked-about couples after World War II ended. They had 3 daughters together, Cindy, Tammy, and Lori, and Calhoun loved them a lot, even though his busy job kept him away from home a lot. But the stress of being famous and Calhoun's reputation as a charming guy who liked women eventually hurt their marriage. Hollywood Gossip magazine has often said he was romantic with his female co-stars, and even though some of his stories weren't true, they damaged his family life. By the late 1960s, their marriage problems got really bad and couldn't be fixed. In 1969, Lita Barron publicly said Calhoun cheated on her as the reason they were splitting up, which was a brave thing to do back then. She even said in interviews that she could forgive a lot of things, but not being lied to, and this statement made big news and showed everyone the personal problems behind their glamorous-looking life. After more than 20 years together, their marriage officially ended in 1970, closing the chapter known of Hollywood's longest relationships from the golden days. Even though his first divorce hurt, Calhoun didn't give up on finding love. In 1971, he found a partner again with Sue Rhodes, a British journalist who liked him not just because he was a movie star, but also because he was funny and warm. Their relationship was a different part of Calhoun's life, a more grown-up and settled-down time. Unlike his marriage to Lita, which happened when Hollywood reporters were watching everything, his relationship with Sue is more private and quiet. They really respected each other a lot, and Calhoun's friends often said that Sue helped make his life more stable and peaceful. Sadly, after several years together, they had problems that ended in a divorce in 1979, but love hadn't completely disappeared between them. Being apart let both Calhoun and Sue think about what they really loved about each other. The connection that brought them together never really went away. And like something from one of his own movies, Rory and Sue decided to get married again in 1982. Their second marriage was quieter and more peaceful than the first one, based in being good companions rather than being glamorous. By that time, Calhoun had mostly stopped being in the spotlight, and he just wanted to enjoy life at a slower speed. He often talked nicely about his later years with Sue, loving the understanding and forgivested getting back together brought. For many years, Hollywood insiders whispered about the friendship and competition bet two of the most famous Western stars ever, Rory Calhoun and Randolph Scott. Both men were perfect examples of tough masculinity, charm, and that old-fashioned cowboy way that defined the golden age of Westerns. But even though they had similar careers and knew the same people, most people rarely heard Calhoun talk about Scott. That is, until now. In a rare and very honest interview he gave late in his life, Calhoun finally decided to share his real feelings about Randolph Scott, the man respected, was jealous of, and sometimes quietly competed with. Randolph Scott, Calhoun started, was the kind of guy you couldn't help but look up to. He acted with this quiet dignity, like he was born riding a horse. Even when cameras weren't rolling, he had that cowboy grace that most of us treat to act like. For him, it was just natural. Calhoun's voice got softer when talked about Scott's acting, explaining that his calm confidence had a big influence on other actors in Western movies. He wasn't loud, headed and show off, and he didn't need to. You could feel the respect in the room when he walked in. He didn't have to admit it. He earned it, but Calhoun also admitted there was some competition between them. We were both leading men, both tall, both trying to make our mark in a business that didn't have room for too many cowboys at the same time. I'll be honest, I was jealous of how easy everything seemed for him. He made being a star look simple, and that used to make me crazy when I was younger. Calhoun laughed as he remembered his early frustrations trying to be as good as Scott. I was out there working my butt off to prove myself, and Randolph would just stand there, tip his shit, say 3 words, and steal few whole dang scene. Even though there was competitive tension, Calhoun said there was no hate, only respect. Randolph wasn't the type to play mean. Actually, he was one of the nicest men I ever met in this town. Hollywood can be a real mean place. You learn that quickly. But Scott never let that meanness affect him. He treated everyone from bosses to extras with the same respect. That taught me a lot about the kind of man I wanted to be. Calhoun also thought about how Randolph Scott's life away from cameras was interesting to him. He lived quietly, didn't care much for attention, and that always impressed me. The movie studios wanted him at every party, every big event, but he liked his ranch and his horses better. That's a special thing, a man in this business who doesn't need people clapping for him. He stopped for a moment before adding, maybe that's why audiences trusted him. He wasn't selling a fake image. He wasted the real thing. When asked if Scott ever gave him advice during their years in Hollywood, Calhoun smiled like heck knew something special. He wasn't the kind to sit you down and give big speeches, but he showed by example. He once told me, Rory, don't ever chase fame. It runs faster than any horse, and if you catch it, it'll throw you off. I never forgot that. He was right too. The times I chased it, I got hurt. Calhoun said that his respect for Scott got even bigger after seeing how he grew old gracefully and did it his own way. When Randolph retired, he didn't make a big deal about it. He just rode off, literally into his own kind of sunset.no scandals. No big headlines, just peace. I respected that more than anything. He knew when to stop, and not many of us do. But Calhoun also shared that part of him wished they had Becco Mecklisser friends. I always wanted to sit down with him, man to man, and tell him how much he influenced me. But back in those days, you didn't say things like that, especially cowboy to cowboy. We were too darn proud. He laughed quietly, his voice sounding nostalgic. I think Heck knew, though. I think he always knew. In thinking about his own legacy, Calhoun said he understood the big shadow Scott cast over the Western genre. If you ask me, every actor who ever put on a cowboy hat owes something to Randolph Scott. Hess at the bar. I just tried to ride somewhere close behind him. As the conversation was ending, Calhoun's tone became thoughtful. Randolph was more than a movie star. He was a symbol of autonomy when men didn't need to yell to be heard. He taught me that real strength comes from holding back, from knowing who you are and not letting Hollywood kinge that. And that, he finished, is something I've carried with me every day since. Rory Calhoun's words showed more than just respect. They showed humility, the kind that only comes from a man looking back with honesty and being thankful. Despite all the glitz and glory of Hollywood, Calhoun's tribute painted a picture of two cowboys who shared not just the screen, but a quiet, lasting respect that defined a whole era of Western heroes. Rory Calhoun died on April 28, 1999, at Providence St. Joseph Medical Center in Burbank, California, ending a long, colorful, and often unpredictable life that had lasted 76 amazing years. His death was caused by problems from emphysema and diabetes, two long-term sicknesses that had slowly weakened his body in his later years. Emphysema, a disease usually caused by smoking for a long time, slowly destroys the lungs' ability to work, making even simple things like walking or talking really hard and exhausting. Calhoun, like many men from his time and job, had lived a tough outdoorsy lifestyle, smoking, drinking, and working long hours on movie sets under the hot California sun. These habits, though they seemed normal for Hollywood's golden era masculinity, eventually hurt his health. In his final years, Calhoun's getting sicker made it hard for him to be in movies, but he was still loved by fans and co-workers who admired both his talent and his toughness. He had fought emphysema for several years, needing medical care and sometimes going to the hospital to manage the disease. His diabetes made things even harder, affecting his energy and how he felt overall, even though he had health problems. People who knew him best often said that Calhoun kept his sense of humor and dignity until the end. He kept having visits from family, close friends, and fans who saw in him a mix of old Hollywood grace and cowboy toughness. At the time of his death, Rory Calhoun was 76 years old, which was a good age for a man who had lived such a daring and full life. In the early years when he was famous, not many people would have guessed that the rebellious young guy who once spent time in prison would someday live to be a respected older person of Hollywood's Western genre. His long life proved how resilient and strong-willed he was. Many people in the entertainment industry said nice things about him after he died, remembering his professionalism, his easygoing personality on set, and the way he showed the spirit of the American frontier, both on screen and both on screen of Amdon.